Zodiac isn't a film about catching a killer, it's about what happens when the need for answers becomes an obsession, and the questions never stop haunting you. Just before we get into it, if you like film analysis on films that stay with us long after they end, please consider clicking subscribe. Directed by David Fincher, Zodiac follows the hunt for the elusive Zodiac killer in 1970s San Francisco. Jake Gyllenhaal plays cartoonist turned amateur investigator Robert Graysmith, Mark Ruffalo is Detective Dave Toschi, and Robert Downey Jr. is reporter Paul Avery. So let's break down what the ending of Zodiac is actually doing, and why it refuses to give us closure. Most crime films train us to expect a final unmasking, a confession, a moment where everything clicks into place. Zodiac deliberately denies us that. By the time the film reaches its final stretch, the murders have mostly stopped. The case hasn't failed because the investigators weren't good enough, it's failed because the system can't prove what it strongly suspects. The film strongly implies that Arthur Lee Allen is the Zodiac, but it never legally confirms it. Allen fits witness descriptions. He owns a Zodiac watch. A survivor identifies him years later. His behaviour raises every red flag imaginable, but suspicion isn't proof.
Can I help you? No.
Zodiac isn't really asking who did it, it's asking what it costs when you can't prove it. Early on, Robert Graysmith starts out as almost irrelevant to the case. He's curious but detached. He's hovering on the edge of the investigation, trying to make sense of it from a distance. But as the police are forced to move on, he shifts. The investigation doesn't end, it transfers to him. Graysmith can't let go. The unanswered questions begin shaping his life. His marriage suffers, his career drifts, his sense of self becomes tied to solving something the world has already accepted may never be solved. And this is where Zodiac becomes quietly devastating, because it's not just about the victims of violence, it's about the people damaged by uncertainty.
I need to know who he is. I need to stand there. I need to look him in the eye. And I need to know that it's him.
Paul Avery starts out sharp, cynical, and fully aware of the media spectacle surrounding the case. He understands the killer's hunger for attention, and for a while he seems equipped to handle it. But when the Zodiac letters turn personal, the tone changes and Avery becomes a target. Paranoia creeps in and his humour and energy drains away. By the end of the film, he's retreated from journalism completely. He's isolated. There's a strong implication of alcoholism. He doesn't lose his life to the case, but he loses his soul, his sense of who he is. Dave Toschi, meanwhile, is the closest thing Zodiac has to a traditional hero. He believes in process, in persistence, in doing the job properly. But procedure fails him. Evidence disappears. Pressure mounts to close the case and move on. Toschi isn't removed from the case because he's wrong. He's removed because the system values closure over truth. And that's what makes this ending so bleak. It isn't dramatic, it's purely procedural. Each of these characters represents a different response to not knowing who the Zodiac is and never finding out. Avery collapses under it, Toschi is worn down by it, and Graysmith is consumed by it. The killer doesn't just leave bodies behind, he leaves long-term damage. Damage that is distributed out in different ways. These characters now have a shared trauma, and they don't know what to do with it. There's a scene late in the film, the basement scene, that's often mistaken for a reveal, but nothing new is actually confirmed there. The scene places us inside suspicion rather than evidence. It shows how belief forms when proof is out of reach, and that Graysmith is so desperate he's now not thinking straight. It's also a genuinely terrifying little scene that for me shows how Zodiac can work as a pure horror film. The suspect Graysmith encounters is one of the strangest people he's ever met. But the fascinating thing is that the film hints it's probably all in Robert's head, that this guy Rick isn't actually the Zodiac at all. Graysmith is simply so on edge that a slightly peculiar man becomes a terrifying monster. And the film does that to us too. David Fincher has us feeling exactly like Robert, completely at the mercy of paranoia. When one of the survivors identifies Arthur Lee Allen years later, it feels significant, but also legally meaningless. Too much time has passed, and the damage is already done. The film doesn't end with justice, it ends with a man finally convinced he knows the truth, even though the world will never officially agree with him. That scene where Graysmith walks into the hardware store and looks Arthur Lee Allen in the eye just to say to him, "I know." That is Graysmith's closure, but the painful thing about it is it's incomplete closure because he can never fully prove it. The film for me is less about the murders and more about the long-term effects on the people whose lives were consumed by the case. These are the people who are usually forgotten because the world is always more fascinated with the killer than the ones who chased him. Zodiac gives those people their due. It's about spending a lifetime searching and carrying on long after everyone else has given up. I do like the fact that Zodiac's ending isn't unresolved because David Fincher chose not to resolve it. It's unresolved because that's what the case became in real life. And I think that's why the film still lingers. It's true to what happened. Despite this, I do think the film does well not to paint the entire investigation as a failure, just because it didn't end with a conviction. Dave Toshi and Robert Graysmith dedicated their lives to this, and they did everything they could within the circumstances they were in. The search wasn't pointless, it was simply never concluded. And I do find that idea fascinating. You can devote your life to something that's never fulfilled or solved, but that doesn't make it meaningless, and that's kind of at the core of Zodiac. Ultimately, the message of the film is some questions don't haunt us because they're horrifying, they haunt us because they outlast us. So if you're interested in films that sit with discomfort rather than rushing to closure, there's more on the channel, including a recent ending explained on 7. Let me know what you think of Zodiac, and thanks for watching.